How we doing, nation? John here. Y'all ready for some history? Hey, look here. So here's the deal. Next week, I think we're going to war game because a lot of people have asked, and there have been several sightings of United Nation vehicles here in the United States. So I thought it'd be really cool next week to war game a what-if scenario if the UN, the Blue Helmets, came in as peacekeepers here in the United States. What would that conflict look like? Because, folks, there would be a conflict. But this week, we are talking about Operation Fishbowl. So to recap last week, and I will drop it in the description below because there's a lot of new people that have joined the History Channel, our beloved backup channel here at Prepper Nation, right? A lot of people have joined over the last week. So you may have missed it. Last week we talked about Operation Paperclip, and Operation Paperclip is basically, just to recap, the end of World War II. A bunch of highly intelligent Nazi rocket scientists are brought to the United States. They're given citizenship, a complete and total blind eye to the fact that many of them were responsible for horrific crimes. And the lead scientist that was brought over, a card-carrying Nazi, actually founded NASA. So we're going to continue that discussion this week with Operation Fishbowl. What is Operation Fishbowl? Well, in 1962, Operation Fishbowl was a series of tests, high-altitude nuclear tests done by the Department of Defense. And the official story is they wanted to know the effects of, an explosion high altitude. How is that going to affect communications? How is that going to affect people down below? Now, there were a few people where this was executed, like on remote islands and things like that. But directly under the blast, they actually used rabbits, I believe. I believe it was rabbits. To see the effects, does it cause them to go blind when they're looking at the explosions, things like this. That's the official cover story. What most people don't know, because when you read Operation Fishbowl or you try and Google it or whatever, you're going to get hit with that. That's the cover story, okay? It's declassified, so if you continue to dig around, maybe if you use alternative search engines or paper books from back in the day, son, you can't get any better than that. So if you dig around, you're actually going to find that Operation Fishbowl was the tail end of a huge operation called Operation Dominic. Very, very important, the wording there, Dominic. Okay, we'll get into that in a second. And so what we find is that Operation Dominic actually starts in 1958. And they launch 3 very large rockets up, and detonate them, followed by 3 smaller rocket shots. So the first big rocket is Teak. The second is Orange, and the third is Yucca. And then this is very important. Pay attention to the wording here, okay? The 3 small rocket shots are called the Argus rocket shots. And what's interesting about this, and I'm going to actually link some of the black and white footage of the test down below. It's here on YouTube. I had to dig around to find it, but what's interesting is when these rockets go up and they hit, it looks like they're hitting something because they spread out. They spread out like they would not normally do. And according to the DOD itself, in the declassified papers, the reason for Operation Fishbowl, again, which was at the tail end of Operation Dominic, was that the first series of tests were poorly instrumented and hastily executed. And so ask yourself why. Do you think our government ever rushes into anything like this? There's usually tons of paperwork. Bureaucrats, you got to clear the funding. You got to, you know, they overplan almost everything, which is good. I'm not saying that it's not good. It's just that in this particular case, they're saying, oh man, we didn't have the right stuff. We rushed it. And they blamed the Cold War. The Soviet Union had performed similar tests, so they claimed, and the United States was just playing keep up. But again, in reality, the things hit, they spread. Okay, that's very important. So, why is that important? The name of the grand operation, if you will, Operation Dominic, the key word here, the root word is dome. Dominic, first and foremost. Second of all, Dominic begins again in 1958. Now, why is this important? Well, in 1958, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, they actually list a dome over the earth, folks. Again, in 1958 in the Encyclopedia Britannica. What is the dome called in the Encyclopedia Britannica, you ask? Argus. The same name that the 3 smaller rocket shots are given during this operation. So it is largely believed in the conspiracy communities. I'm not going to commit one way or the other on this, okay? If you saw the video last week, you know I don't want to commit for sure because I haven't been to outer space. I don't know 100% if we've been there or not. I don't know. I'm just basing this off of the information I have, right? Which is, do you trust NASA in 2021 when they show you altered images, CGI, of outer space where there's no trash, no debris, no satellites floating around? We should have thousands of huge satellites orbiting. You should see them. They're big enough to see, but we don't see them. We don't see a lot of the stuff that should be there. NASA is on record saying, you know, we go in and we alter them a little bit. We scrub this stuff out to make it more pleasant for the, you know, people watching. Do you trust that source? And do you trust the people that are in charge now? Or do you trust the information that was available at the time this stuff was going down? 1958, again, because in 1958, the encyclopedias, which is what everyone relied on, was no internet back then, right? So everybody's looking at the encyclopedias. If you investigate this from, you know, the standpoint of scholarly, you're looking for a primary source, meaning you're looking for the information that was as close as possible to when this happened. So if you put this in a courtroom, in other words, the information that we have from 1958 is going to outweigh what we're being told now in 2021. And people will say, well, science has advanced, science has advanced. And maybe so. It still does not explain why these tests took place and why, when these rockets were volleyed up at a certain altitude, every single time they spread out. It doesn't explain why the operation itself, you know, is root worded dome. It doesn't explain why the 3 smaller rocket shots are named Argus, which is also mentioned again in the encyclopedia. That's the name of the dome. It sounds like to me, and this is just a theory, folks, it sounds like to me that either the military here in the United States and Russia, or excuse me, the Soviet Union, they either knew there was a dome there or they strongly believed that there was a dome there. And they tested that theory. They threw it, you know, in their own words, they hastily threw some rockets down and they volleyed them up. And they did not get the results they were looking for. Rather than going, you know, all the way up and exploding, you know, at the edge of outer space, these things spread out. And so they put together a much more elaborate campaign, almost like they were trying to bust out of something. I mean, the thing is literally called Operation Fishbowl. Okay, so take that however you want. That is Operation Fishbowl at a glance. But it leads to much larger questions. Because after you look at the information, the paperclip and Fishbowl, you have to, at that point, fall into one of two camps. Either you believe what you're being told by the government and NASA, because they're joined at the hip, right? You believe that, you know, billions of dollars each year in funding is going to NASA in order to explore outer space that is also being altered by NASA for human consumption. Or you fall into the camp where you believe we're being lied to by the government. And the question becomes, why? Most people are going to be taught from a very early age, folks. They're in school, they, you know how it is, they got the globe of the planet in the classrooms. I guess they still have them, I don't know. And you spin it and you're taught it's a globe and this is how it works, which is fine. It may work that way. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying at that early of an age, when you're taught this is how it works, most people never question it again. They just take it as gospel and they run with it for the rest of their lives. Okay? They're under the illusion that there are millions of other Earths out there like the one we're living on. We just have to find them. We can destroy this planet. We just have to find other suitable, habitable planets, right? And a lot of people, most people, fall into that camp. There's the other camp, however, that believes this is it. This is the only one we have. When you get into it from a biblical standpoint, biblically speaking, the earth that we are on now is the center of the universe. This is like the focal point of God's creation. If you believe that, then you believe that people have purpose. If we're living on the focal point of what the Creator made, and we are made in His image, then we are here for a reason, and we are very important to Him. But if you believe that there are millions of other Earths out there to be discovered, we become far less important, don't we? We're just like slime or, you know, biological creatures with no real purpose. We're just walking around, stumbling around. So this thing can actually get biblical. I would love to know what you folks think when it comes to this, because again, I'm undecided. I think the government does have a history of lying to people. Now, are they lying about this particular thing? I don't know. Again, you have to weigh the evidence. You go to the primary source in 1958, the encyclopedia, okay? Which at that time, this was the best company to go to for information. This wasn't an obscure form of the encyclopedia. This was the one. This was what everybody went to for answers. And then of course, the Holy Bible. The 1958 encyclopedia and the Holy Bible, they seem to coincide. They seem to tell the same story about where we're living. It's all of the stuff that we get now, after 1958 moving forward. Because what happened was, Operation Fishbowl took place, and they said, oh, you know, we're just testing a bunch of stuff out. And then you don't get mention of the dome anymore, moving forward from the company, you know, that made the encyclopedias, Britannica. You don't hear about it anymore. All of a sudden, from that point forward, they begin to hammer into people the globe. That is where the globe comes into place. All right. You see the globe in many different logos. They're really drilling the point home. Now you may fall into that camp, and that's fine, but I'm going to leave you this week with a very important question. You can look at this from a biblical standpoint. You can look at this from a one world government standpoint, or the cabal, whatever you want to look at it from, son. If we in fact live on a globe, and I think most of us can agree with this, that there's a push for globalization, and it's even in the word, right? And a one world government, a one world currency. It's pretty obvious that if that takes place, it's going to be at the hands of the United Nations, the UN, okay? If that's the case, why is the UN using a flat earth logo? And I'm just going to leave it there. I would love to know what you folks think. Let me know in the comments. Do you believe that we're living on a globe hurtling through space? Do you believe this is the focal point of the universe? Do you believe our government is being completely honest about this? Are they hiding things? What's the deal? I would love to know, because again, I'm undecided. It's a very interesting topic, but unfortunately it's one of those deals that will take you way down the rabbit hole and leave you wondering for the rest of the day. So anyway, folks, this is John with Prepper Nation. You guys have a blessed day.